Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. How are you, Logan?
Oh, Jordan, we're flying high today. We're flying high. We got a lot going on. We got U.S. men's national team to talk about. We've got Game of Thrones currently going on,
Yeah, are we covering that
Acolyte,
here?
Clone Wars. Yeah, we're talking about it all here on the Stateside Soccer Show. But no, this is a good time of year. You and I were talking about this off the air and through our text messages that like summer anymore, man, with television and sports and everything else. It seems like there's more on TV than there's ever been during the summer.
Yes. Yeah. When we were chatting, I was like, there's a lot to catch up on so far, TV wise, for summer, which is an odd thing that usually was never the case, right? Summer used to
Yeah,
be like, oh,
reality
here's
shows.
the reality shows to buy time until we can get our scripted shows made again. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And this summer in particular is the summer of soccer. A lot of stuff going on in the soccer world. Euros, I've
Mhm.
been watching those. We have the Copa America coming up. We have Olympics coming up. So a lot of good stuff to talk about. And I think since last week we ended with the U.S. team, I think this week we're going to start with the U.S. men's national team.
Sounds
So we're
good.
going to go there, and we're going to go to the Brazil U.S. men U.S. men's national team versus Brazil, where we joked they would lose like 6-2. Ended up being a 1-1 draw. Pretty good result for the U.S. as they reset. The wake up call from the Colombia match seemed to have actually woke them up. They didn't press snooze, and they played pretty well. Logan, give me your thoughts on this game and how it sets up for Copa.
I will say it was weird because I mean we had talked about the Columbia game, and I mean you go back and listen to last week's episode, and it's pretty gloom. I mean it was like, man, it's Greg. We talked about how Greg wasn't the guy that we really thought was needed, but it eventually he became the guy that they had to have, because I don't think they really had other options, and they were unwilling to kind of move off of him, and they brought him back into the scrutiny of many. He comes in and he's not performed as well, and he's not beaten some of these top teams. He's not really competed with some of these top teams. He's really struggled against them, and so going into this game, Jordan, you and I joke, but I really did. I felt like it could get away from us big time. If Colombia had gotten away from us, then who knows how this game was going to go? And they come into Orlando, which is, I mean, I would say that the stadium was probably 75%, 80% Brazilian fans. It was insane because there's such a heavy Brazilian contingency with all the visitors and also people that live here. We have a huge Brazilian population, and so I knew that they would go out to those games, and it was like playing on home turf for them. It was hot. It was, to their liking. I thought Brazil really dominated the second half as far as possession was concerned, but I never felt like they dominated the United States in any way. Like I felt like the U.S. had control most of the time. There were obviously some moments when Matt Turner needed to stand on his head, but also I felt like they put Allison in that same kind of situation. Jordan, I felt like it played to what we had talked about at the end of last episode, right? Where we had no choice but to kind of sit and let Brazil kind of do what they do and then strike back as quickly as possible. So the possession game, we tried to work possession, but that's never going to work against a talent like Brazil. And honestly, I think it's better when they're on the attacking for the front foot. Like I feel like we're a better team because of the way that we had to react to the way that they were attacking. And it all started with Vinny Jr. down the left side trying to get past Scally, and Scally just dogged him the whole day. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast watching it. It was probably the best game that I'd seen the U.S. play in a really long time. So it was a lot of fun.
I was out during this game. I was living the sweet life as we
With
were,
Zach and Cody.
yeah, in an actual suite at the Orioles game for
Yeah.
a work event. So that was cool. But um, the, so I'm there and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to press record. So I have Hulu Live TV. So that's the good thing is like now I can control my recordings while I'm out and about instead of like, oh, I didn't press record on the remote before I stepped out, right? So that's what I did. And I'm pretty sure I clicked record on the TNT version. Okay. But I get home that night and I'm like, I had to take the dogs out, had to get everything settled, shower, all that stuff. Sit down, laying in bed. I'm like, all right, it's like almost midnight. I'm going to watch the first half. And I go to click it, and it is the Spanish version in standard definition. I was so upset. Like the screen, you know how like in the standard def ones, like the screen is so small.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a high def thing, so the screen was really small, and I'm like, what is this? And I was like, I swear I pressed record on the TNT. So I just went to Peacock and watched it in high def, still Spanish, but
Yeah.
I don't have Max right now, so I did not have access to the English version. So who knows what anybody was saying about the game, but that's how I watched it. And it was a uh, pretty great first half. All the goals come in the first half. You got Pulisic's great goal. By the way, did Allison set up this wall wrong or what? Like I feel like there was nobody actually in front of Pulisic.
I think it was strange because I was wondering the same thing. I was like, how did somebody so good, so class let that? I mean, it was like watching a blooper reel. And I think so. Like I think he set them up to the left hand side as if Pulisic was going to go to his right foot and go up over the wall into that kind of like if he's facing the goal into that right corner. So I guess Allison's left, and Allison had them squared there. And then what happened was I think it was Wea and Reina or some two of them were standing beside the wall, and it was brilliant.
And
Like
then
it
they
was like
tailed
brilliant,
off. Yeah.
and they tailed off in front of Allison. But I did find that strange. Like why? I mean, it was a huge gap between the wall and where they were standing, and then that left corner of the net. It was very strange. Like it was one of the worst defensive blunders I've ever seen on a free kick. Like it was almost like they'd giving him a penalty, and he just got it right past Allison.
Yeah.
And the wall might as well not have even been there. It was very strange.
That was my thought. It was like this doesn't even look like they. But maybe it's because of the way that the two were standing that they
I
had to
think
then
maybe.
put the wall a certain way, and then that's what opened it up for him. Yeah, so it was a very odd free kick. Let's talk about the goal. Matt Turner had 11 saves, right? They did give up one goal, kind of coming off of a Matt Turner error. I know this was very frustrating for you, especially live watching it. Me, I'd kind of already, since I was already spoiled on it, I was kind of like, well, we get that goal back. But what was kind of going through your mind when the goal was given up, especially so early? Did you start thinking this is this is the first of four? This is whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that you play Brazil, it's early 1-0, and it's 17th, 18th minute or whatever it was. It felt like it was going to be trouble, and I will say Matt Turner had probably the best game he's ever had, but it started out rocky, and we've seen so many Matt Turner games where things haven't gone as planned, and I still think there's a lot of room for improvement with Matt. I think there's I do think he's our best keeper, but I do think that there are different holes that he has that maybe somebody like a Tim Howard didn't have when we did have Timmy in the goal. I think with any of the U.S. goalkeepers right now, you have some glaring, I guess, weaknesses, and I think the problem with him was that it was a goal kick, and all you have to do is really boot it, and you don't really. Against a team like Brazil, it'd be the same that if you're playing like Argentina, Germany, England. Like you just wouldn't put a goal kick right into the heart of the pitch, and it wasn't well struck, so it kind of just hung up, and it got stuck into a spot where, I mean, Brazil's going to be dangerous as heck in that spot, and they were defensively. They kind of had some lapses. I think there's times where Tim Ream and Chris Richards and anybody that we kind of put in those center back spots. I think there's moments, like a Reynolds that where I think they're not the best center backs, and Tim Ream, love him to death, but he's just not fleet of foot, and so anything in that center part of the pitch where they're going to be able to just dissect you, they did, and it was a pretty easy goal, and you can kind of see it coming. That was the bad thing. It was like 15 seconds of just watching this go right down the gut and right into the back of the net, and it was like there's nothing we could do about it. It was kind of like playing a Messi team that was just like Messi takes off with it and you go, well, there we go. That was 15 minutes or 15 seconds of just going, oh no, oh no, oh no.
So you
So
meant a Messi team as an Messi or
both.
Messy,
Yeah,
and
both.
we were the
No,
Messi
Leon.
team.
I was talking more Lionel Messi.
Okay.
When Messi goes darting across the midfield in MLS, and you're like, no, this is not going to go well, and you just the whole time going, no, 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 no. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, so they had 24 shots that were on frame, right? Brazil.
Hmm.
They had just expected 2.2 goals, while we had a 1.2 expected goals from 12 shots. So, uh, pretty big difference. I was score watching on FOTMob while I'm at the Orioles game, and it was, a seeing like some of the stats favor them, but then like I think at one point we had the better XG. I think if I remember correctly, at a certain point, or we were doing better than I had thought we would do. This is one of the first times. Well, I think it's only the second time we haven't lost to Brazil.
I think so.
I think it was something I sent you
Yeah.
like that in a tweet. Or it was the second time we drew at them. Yeah, it was something like that. But I went in 2014 to FedEx Field. What a mistake! Just that place is a mess. Um, and we lost 4-1. And then you spend like 3 hours getting out of the parking lot because there's one entrance and one exit to FedEx Field. So like that is that's what I was kind of expecting, especially like 2014's team. Was it 2012? Sorry, it was 2012's team. So still, right before 2014 World Cup. So we were a pretty good team at that point. So was Brazil, but you're looking at it like, man, we got beat 4-1. And then this team, I feel like we think we have all the talent, but we're a little down on the tactics, and here they come 1-1. I do think Greg was feeling pressure. We talked about what he was saying after the game last week, and what his that whole debate on what is what. But they came up and he drilled it into the players. They came out and played a lot better, so much better, that I feel better going into Copa America. What about you? Do you feel a lot better as we prepare to turn the page and face, I think it's Bolivia first?
Yeah, Sunday actually. So, yeah, I think looking at this game, this match, Jordan, they responded in a way that, and I texted you this. They responded in a way where they've never responded before, and I mean, this was a game where I thought they could have just absolutely folded. And to be honest with you, after that first goal that Brazil scored, I'm like, this is where they give up on Greg. Like this is where the team, folds up and goes, you know what, we don't want him here. And I think if we continue to just to play like this, then he'll be gone, kind of thing. But they rallied. The biggest moment for me was obviously Christian Pulisic, but just him the whole match. Like we finally got to see Christian in a match of just a lot of talent in games that we don't typically get to see him in unless you're following Milan or followed Chelsea. But I mean, Jordan, he he was easily the best player on the pitch. Matt Turner really had to stand on his head and was more just forced into it, whereas Christian really did. It felt like he was ready to just serve Brazil a 2-1 loss on a platter. And, we had our moments where we could have. But I really did see Christian finally take that big step that we've kind of been waiting for him to take with the U.S. men's national team. It was like he was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm going to put us on my back, and we're going to go. And he really did. Like I felt like so going into I mean, this is huge confidence. That they were talking about that on the broadcast that was in English that you couldn't understand. They were saying this is such a huge confidence boost for this team because you don't often go up against a team like Brazil and come out, better than what you thought. One, but two, could have won, and should maybe have won if they put some chances away. So, yeah, I was really impressed with this game. Obviously, I think they got to shore up some defensive issues, and they're not ever going to be as star-studded, I don't think, as Brazil. But this was finally, Jordan. This was that answer of a game for a team that doesn't usually have an answer.
Yeah. So Copa does start on the 20th, not for the U.S., but that is the tournament start date. So that's Thursday,
That's
which
wild.
we're really close to. USA, though, they kick off in Group C on June 23rd, 2024, and that is at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Central. USA versus Bolivia. That's going to take place in Arlington, Texas. Later that night at 9 o'clock Eastern, you'll have Uruguay and Panama facing off at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. Then the USA will play again June 27th at 6 p.m. Eastern against Panama. That's in Georgia. Panama's not in Georgia. The game is in
I was going to say, did they move Panama?
Uruguay and Bolivia at 9 o'clock Eastern Time at MetLife Stadium. Then July 1st, 3 days before our country's holiday, birthday, they will face off at 9 o'clock Eastern Time against Uruguay. That's going to take place in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. And Bolivia and Panama will kick off the same time at Orlando at Inter&Co Stadium. What an awful name. Inter&Co. That sounds awful. Inter&Co Stadium.
Exploria was so much better.
It was. Sounded like you could explore something at least.
Yeah, it was cool.
But the tournament itself kicks off with Group A, June 20th, 8 o'clock, Argentina facing off against Canada. What a great match that should be. And that's in Atlanta, Georgia, where they will kick off at 8 o'clock. And that's the one game of the day. And then they'll play again June 1st, and it's going to be June 21st. It's going to be Peru, Chile. And then Group B will kick off June 22nd, which is Saturday. I'm really excited for this. So I guess before we turn the page on the U.S. men's national team and back to MLS, who had a full slate of games this week, what should our expectations be for Copa America? And I guess even for the group itself. As a reminder, USA's group is Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. They will play each team one time. So there are 9 points up for grabs. If I was to ask you, Logan, how many points are the USA walking out of Group C with? What are you going to say?
We have an advantage because we play in the U.S. And some of these countries don't travel as well up here. Panama was the team that we struggled with in CONCACAF and World Cup qualifying. So that'll be a tight one, I feel. I do feel like the U.S. is better than Bolivia. Uruguay, I think, could go either way. So, Jordan, I'd say if I had to guess, I'm going to guess out of the 9 points possible, I'm going to go with 6 points for the U.S.
And I'm going to be very optimistic and say, give me 7 points. That's 2 wins and a draw. Let's go. It's one of those things where it's going to be 7 or 4.
Yeah.
You know, like 7, you're like, man, that was a really great group stage. 4, you're like, that was all right. Like, that's kind of like we beat Bolivia and we drew with Panama, or we beat Panama and drew with Bolivia and lost to Uruguay. Like, whatever. That's probably still enough to get you out of the group. But yeah, give me 7 points. I feel like I would feel pretty good about 7 points.
Top 2 advance into the knockout round.
Yes.
So if we can get into the knockout round, I'm feeling pretty good. I don't think I do. I think the U.S. is better than Panama, and I think the U.S. is better than Bolivia. Uruguay, I think, is the team that will kind of, I don't know. We'll see. But
so
I feel pretty good about our group, Jordan, though. I feel like we didn't draw any of the heavyweights.
Here's the thing. I don't know when they scheduled the friendlies, but I guess they did a good job because they picked Brazil and Colombia. And that's who you're looking at facing in the next round, because the winner of Group C faces the runner-up of Group D, and the runner-up of Group C faces the winner of Group D. So guess who's in Group D? Brazil and Colombia. So is Paraguay and Costa Rica. We're familiar with Costa Rica well enough, but, so maybe if Paraguay gets an upset, you're looking at maybe somebody that you didn't play in the friendlies going off here. So it, I don't know. Would you rather play Brazil again or Colombia a second time?
I mean, Brazil, no.
Yeah.
I don't. You know,
Oh no,
as bad as
Ronaldinho doesn't think there's much to this Brazil team. He came out pretty hard against them.
I will agree in the fact that they did look like with so again talking about the last match when Scally knocked out Vinicius Jr. pretty much all match, they didn't really have much else. I mean, they got the young kid Edric, I think is his name, who's 17, going to be 18, and is going to play for Madrid. I think it's a whole lot of guessing there, but I know he's 17 because he's not yet been able to transfer. So I think he's going to Real Madrid. And the kid's a freak. He's going to be a superstar. But I think he's just too young right now, and he just doesn't quite understand the world game yet. So US has, I mean, I will say that though, Jordan, like the attacking front, besides Vinicius Jr., I thought, they have Rodrigo and they've got guys like that. Like it just, but I felt like the US's attacking front actually looks more polished. Looks like they've played together longer. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. That's a really good. That's a good. Uh, I guess next group that we'd have to play between those two, like not a group, but two teams that we might have to face. I'm trying to find Bolivia on the world ranking chart, and I can't. Oh, there we go. 85th. So
85th.
85th.
What are we
We
currently?
are currently 11th. We had moved up. We're above Colombia. Look at that. We're better than them. Uruguay is 15th, and then who else are we playing? Panama.
Yeah, they should be low.
45th. Again, I thought I felt like the U.S. when we first just talked about this draw that the U.S. got a very favorable draw. We did not
Yeah,
get any
I
of the
mean,
big boys.
I'm kind of at the point though. If we don't beat Bolivia, if we lose to
Greg's gone.
Bolivia, is what I'll say. If we lose to Bolivia, the tournament's done. I can't
Yeah,
see them then going and getting the required 4 points against Panama and Uruguay. Maybe they could. I mean, I guess technically they could, but they could draw Uruguay, beat Panama. But I would say that's putting you in a hole already, right? So beat Bolivia, beat Panama, and get yourself to where the Uruguay game doesn't really matter, except for if you're finishing first or second. Like that would be perfect. And that's kind of what my expectation is on what this team should be. Now, that's a little different than what some people are saying that we have to reach the semis, because I do think Brazil and Colombia, whoever we get out of there, if they are the two that get through, that's going to be tough. Now, luckily, we did just play them again, so maybe the Colombia game, our players would be a little bit more aware on what they're trying to do, and we'd be able to, stop them in that regard. The Brazil game, I feel like we got that luck in the friendly, and we're probably not having that luck when we face them in the tournament. But Brazil is notorious for underperforming on a lot of the national stage lately, right? Like the last time they've won a World Cup now, we're talking about forever ago. So yeah, I guess I would rather probably face Brazil a second time, because at least if you lose to Brazil, it's like, well, we lost to Brazil. Especially if they go on and like win the whole thing or get close to it. Colombia, while they are a good team, it would be like, man, we lost to them twice right before the tournament and during the tournament. That'd be kind of tough to stomach, I think.
they're gonna play the next, like if they got to the knockout round, they're playing in Vegas or Arizona, which I kind of like. I like Vegas. I'm not sure about it. Arizona's awfully close. I feel like South American countries travel pretty well, and Arizona's a little closer. But Vegas, it seems like that'll be a heavy U.S. crowd.
I don't know. We'll be outnumbered everywhere, I think. I
That's
really
what's
do
going to be
think
sad
that.
about World
Yeah.
Cup. Like
Yeah.
the only place that I feel like we could play in the United States that we'd get more Americans is the Midwest. Like I
Yeah.
feel like if we for some reason hosted games in like Columbus, Ohio, like that's where they show up. You know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
Cincinnati, it was always a heavy U.S. presence. It's always Midwest, but again, like they're going to play in the sexy cities, and that's L.A. And LA is always going to bring in more international people than the United States in soccer. So Well, maybe in Jordan the World Cup we'll play like random teams from countries that people don't travel in,
Yeah, that'd be
like
great.
like Dubai
There will
or
be a lot more of those because it'll be 48 teams, right?
yeah.
So there'll be some more of those.
What's your confidence level? And I guess that would be the next question.
Confidence
What's
levels, we're winning the whole damn thing. Let's go.
realistically, Jordan? What's the go? What's the expectation? If I'm a fan and I'm not really, I don't really follow U.S. men's national team, but this is my tournament, man. This is where I'm getting pumped. Messi's been here. He's in Copa. I got to turn on Copa now because the U.S. is in it. That's kind of cool. And World Cup's coming, so I got to get
Yeah.
refreshed. Like, where am I expecting as a U.S. fan?
It's funny. Are you that guy at work? I am that guy at work. Where like if soccer is if something big's happening in soccer where they come to me and they're like, so what should I like
Yeah.
know about this? Are we good? Are we bad? Like
Yep. Soccer,
I'm that guy at
100%.
work.
Yeah. Soccer is 100% in any kind of group chats or anything like that. Once it rolls around, the questions are
Yeah.
usually
So like I this type of question, I'm probably going to be fielding it when somebody was watching the UFL this weekend and they saw an ad for Copa America and they're like,
yeah.
"What is this? So USA's in it?" I'm probably going to field some questions about it where they're like, "So what should we realistically expect?" My realistic expectation is first or second in this group. We have to get out of the group. And then that's as far as I can go as promising, or not even really promising, but saying to somebody, this is what your expectations should be. I know a lot of people say you're not, like, again, I've seen a lot of people say our expectations should be semifinal or winning this thing. Yeah, the players, sure. The players should be expecting to win this thing and go in there playing their heart out to try to win each and every game. Fan base wise, I'm not going to get upset like that. I maybe back in the day I would have. I've really mellowed out as a sports fan lately. Like I used to take baseball losses hard every so often, not like freaking out, but being like, "Oh man." Now I just kind of like shrug and say, "Well, that's the breaks, right?" And then especially with how good my team has been lately, it's like, all right, there's usually less losses than wins. With this tournament, for me, it's get out of the group and then see what you can do. And that's what I would tell people. It's like, look, our talent, we can make some noise, but they're still pretty green. And also the tactics are not usually there. We have trouble scoring goals at times under Greg. It's been a Greg thing everywhere he's gone. So if somebody asked me, I'd say, yes, ideal would be win the group, but either or, first or second, just get to the knockout stage. And that's what, a quarterfinal at that stage already? Yeah. And the farthest we've made this is a semifinal. So you really only have to win one more game to match that. And that would be against either Brazil, Colombia, Paraguay, or Costa Rica. Now, if everything goes great, and this is why I can't draw a line, right? If everything goes great and Costa Rica ends up getting second place and we get first place and we draw Costa Rica, then I'm like,
yeah.
we can get to the semifinals.
Yeah.
But if it ends up being Brazil or Colombia, I'm going to be a little bit more hesitant to say, yes, we should get to the semis. My expectation is second place in the group, but I want to win it. I do want to win that group. But my expectations right now are second place, which might work better for us if Colombia finishes. Well, it depends on who you want to face. If you want to face Brazil again, then Brazil has to win the group and we have to finish second. And then you'll have a good rematch. If you want to face Colombia again, then they have to win the group and we'd have to be second, or vice versa.
Maybe Brazil will pull what was in England and Euros where they didn't get they stumbled out tremendously. I don't even think got past the first round. So it's like yikes. But yeah, no, Jordan, like Costa Rica. I mean, they're a good team. I do think that that group is tough. I mean, Paraguay is no chump either. So think weird things can happen in this game. And those two countries will sit back and just absorb those other two. To try to absorb the other two because they won't have much to throw at them. Costa Rica is sneaky good. We've seen that in CONCACAF. So I guess we'll see. But I'm with you. I think winning the group, I think we got to win this group. Second is okay, I guess. You just need to get to that next round. But then after that, it gets tough. And those are tough teams. I almost equate this, Jordan, to like qualifying, but without qualifying. Like this is our qualification tournament. Like this is this is what I think the U.S. is really going to go. This is what we need to do well in. There's a lot of emphasis and focus, and I think that's why there's a lot of pressure because we don't have to qualify for the next World Cup. Like this is our big test, and we're going to throw like the U.S. is always going to get a good international opponent. Like they're going to draw good friendlies just because they're the United States and they know that TV market is going to do well in those countries. So we're going to get good friendlies, but this is the last big hurdle test
competitively.
Yeah,
Yes, because
right.
Gold Cup is not at this level.
No,
And that's
not
next year.
close.
We'll play in it. Sure, it'll be another practice round before the World Cup.
Right.
But this is the thing. This is the one where you're going to face those opponents that are so much bigger than what we can bring to Gold Cup. When we're the giants of Gold Cup and
Yeah.
this CONCACAF in general, nobody else has won the Nations League. So when you have that where we're the top dogs, you need to start playing competitions where we're not the top dogs so we can get used to being the ones that have to play the way that everybody plays against us here in CONCACAF. And that's the kind of thing that we need.
Do you think, I mean, I know we'll have some Canadian listeners looking at Group A with Argentina, Peru, and Chile. Canada got much of a chance to get out of that group?
No.
I
No,
think so either. I don't think so either.
Chile and Argentina will probably move on from that group,
Right.
in my opinion.
Peru's tough. Like Peru's
But
not
look, this is
really
perfect
good.
for Jesse Marsch. Just steps into this role. He has a
That's
big
true.
tournament. He's not going to feel as much pressure in this tournament because it is his first gig. He just got in here. So it'll be a big learning experience, and it's something that they could put towards the World Cup. While we're on the other end, right? USA's on the other end where we've had
Mhm.
Greg for a whole cycle, and we're like, now you have to show us, Greg, that you are taking us to the next level for 2026. Jesse Marsch doesn't have to worry about any of that, I don't think. Canada
Yeah.
is like, look, we kind of flamed out after qualifying for the World Cup, and now we need somebody to take us to another level. But Copa is going to be him getting used to his players in a tournament setting and them getting used to him. And we'll see how they do. I think they can get out of it. I do think they can if they play well, but it's just the adjustment period of having a new manager at the international level.
Mm-hmm. And they've got great players. I mean, Jonathan Osorio. When you've got a healthy Alphonso Davies, one of the best players in the world, so they are not lacking in any form. I do think they were more of like that team that arrived early. You know what I mean? To a party where it's like they arrived early and they've had this huge gap in talent, and now they're starting to catch up to the world. And I still think they're not there yet. I think they've got nice pieces, but I think there's a lot of pieces that they still have to work with in order to become that next elite level. But I think they'll get there. I do. I think as it's written in the wall and written in the stars or whatever you want to say, I honestly believe that Canada will become more of a challenge to the United States than Mexico will in the next decade. So I just feel like they're going in the right direction and steamrolling people on the way in, whereas Mexico seems to be fading out, and there's not really a good like who are they looking to go that guy? Because now, because of American academies, Jordan, a lot of the Mexican kids are coming over to the United States and have dual citizenship. And if you've looked over the last couple of years, the Mexican American international players are picking America over El Tri. So I don't know. That's my bold prediction is that Canada becomes the second giant in CONCACAF soon, and Mexico falls down to the third.
Interesting. All right, I guess we're ready to jump into MLS, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we had a full slate of games. Miami, unfortunately for the Union, ends up winning without Messi, Suarez, and Rojas on Copa America duty. So yes, the Philadelphia Union. What? So hold on. This was we scored early, right? Am I remembering that incorrectly?
No, you guys are up 1-0.
Yes, that's what I thought. Okay, Union scored early. Ua scores this goal. And you're like, all right, they should win this game. They're at home, though, that hasn't been a thing recently. But they're at home. They're playing against a severely depleted Miami. And they have that lead for a good chunk of time, and then it's going to go into a 1-1 situation. Then you're going to get 2 red cards to Miami, right? And you're like, wow, like this is this should be sealed, right? Wrong. Miami ends up winning this in the 90 plus 4 minute out of plus 8 stoppage time. And really, really brutal giveaway and just brutal defense the whole way as he makes his break. And it is Ruiz who gets a red card, and so does Tomas Aviles. I always mess that up. But yeah, so they go ahead and end up winning the game. It was their. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this team right now. I guess I do know what's going on with this team. Not so much the Philadelphia Union tactics wise what's going on with the team, but obviously we've talked about it in the past that this team is not as deep as they probably should be, and they're about to lose Julian Carranza. He's going to Feyenoord, right? He's going to be gone. He didn't play because of probably the final stages of that negotiation. Yeah. They don't want their guy hurt, so that's not going to happen. And there it is. I saw kind of there was a good back and forth today with Andrew Wiebe and a Philadelphia fan that I follow. And I think both sides had good points. And it was about, Wiebe was pretty much saying anybody calling for Curtin's head is dumb, right? And I do agree with that. I don't think this is a Jim Curtin thing. But there is a point that was brought up in there, Logan, that there is a disconnect between Tanner and Curtin. And what I mean by that is there are players that Ernst Tanner has brought in that ends up sitting on the bench we saw it last year with Pereira, right? And who else am I blanking on?
I mean, I would even say like Gazdag at moments, like has had moments where he's not been
there was
in Jim's favor.
Why am I blanking on this? It was a guy that was a attacker Torres.
Oh, yeah.
Torres last year comes in first game of the year, scores a goal against Columbus Crew. Awesome. And then he barely featured after that and come in for small stints. Now, I don't know what's going on in the training ground or anything like that, so who knows, right? Baribo. They brought in Baribo as a striker, and he's barely played any moments at all. And I'm not saying he's going to be good, but that's the issue, right? Are we bringing in players that the coach doesn't want? Or are we bringing in players that have attitudes in training? What is the disconnect that anytime we do bring in depth, Curtin doesn't use them? Are they not good depth? Is Curtin too beholden to his guys? That's the kind of stuff that I don't know, right? And I think Curtin has done such a wonderful job with this team. This team doesn't spend money, so I can't even blame Ernst Tanner on that front because it's probably he probably wants to bring in better players than he's getting. So at all this, I put it on the ownership, and I've been putting it on the ownership this whole time. I see a lot of Union fans saying that they're not going to re-up their season tickets, which, by the way, had a huge increase this year coming up for next year. And for what? For what? They don't even spend the money. Instead, they buy 10% of a club overseas that's going to help them maybe scout stuff, but that's never going to help. You're never going to have a player like Messi or Carlos Vela or anything on this team because the ownership is not going to do it. Somebody tweeted at Kevin Durant because he's a minority owner. And Kevin Durant pretty much just said, look, Kevin Durant's not going to put money into this team like this. He's like an investor, okay? He's not putting in like the big bucks. But somebody said, put money into this team, KD. And he said, or what? And it's like that type of attitude is not great either, right? Like, right. Or what? Or what? We won't support the team, right? Those people are not going to show up anymore. And you know how hard tickets have been to get lately because you tried to buy them. You had to buy them early. That's going to go away. That's going to go away if this team doesn't figure it out.
Yeah, we have the same problem down here, but we'll get into them later. But it's that same issue of like teams they're just not going to show up. If this is not something that's entertaining for people to watch, they won't show up. And I do think Jordan,
especially in Chester, where it's so far out of the way of the city.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah. And I think I feel like there's a lot of internal struggle right now going on with the Philadelphia Union, and I know it's not all the same. And Chris Albright and Pat Noonan have had success in Cincinnati, but they've been open. You know, the purse strings have been open. They've been able to spend. They seem to be on the same exact page, and it's pretty much like, Pat, what do you want? Whereas I feel like Ernst Tanner is. I feel like Ernst Tanner, Jordan, is one of those owners that says, Jim, while you have good judgment on the team that you're running, let me deal with the players that you're going to go get. Like, let me do the scouting. Let my staff do the groundwork and the development and pick out the players that are doing well. There is some kind of disconnect because I do feel like there's been also times where Jim Curtin has been pretty darn honest about, yeah, we need another player. Like, there's been times he said that in the press conference, and you're like, you don't have that elsewhere.
Or
Like,
the Bedoya stuff, right?
right. Yeah.
Ernst Tanner is like, we're not signing
Yep.
Bedoya. And then Bedoya
Jim, like,
came out
that'd
and
be a
said
big
something,
mistake.
and Curtin
Yep.
came out and, yeah, it was like, that'll be a mistake. We're trying our best to get him back. And then they did.
Yep.
So again, it's the disconnect between what's going on over there. Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Is
Yeah.
it like ownership? Is it the GM? Is it the coach? Why are we getting players the coach isn't using? And some of those players he gets, they do use, right?
Right.
And like when Carranza came over from Miami after not being as big of it, like he was a little underperforming in Miami, comes here and starts tearing it up. Awesome. But then some other players that are those same type of moves didn't get used as much. It's just baffling in that regard.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about Miami. Look, Miami, if you were down 2 men and you win this game without your big stars, you gotta feel pretty darn good. Afonso, 90 plus 4 minute. Gressel in the 47th minute. So, you had the first half you were down. You come back for that second half, you get 2 red cards. David Ruiz, right, and Aviles in the 84th minute. And you go out there and win it. And now you still find yourself sitting top of the Eastern Conference and MLS standings. Totally. You got to feel pretty good if you're Miami.
Yeah. No, I think if someone wants to look at a team that's built around really good depth, and they've really done a nice job this offseason. It felt like at every turn they've been adding people, and there's a new guy every week, it seems. And there's probably going to be continuous with Di Maria being linked and, that whole mess. And they're going to keep adding players, and it's just going to keep adding depth and depth and depth. And, once somebody's gone down hurt, they've replaced them with somebody else. They've actually got a really good young couple of players, and it seems like they're just replenishing and replenishing and replenishing, and that's the kind of team, Jordan, that, like, I think becomes so dangerous in this league, just because when Messi leaves, they're going to be they'll be out there adding other talents that want to come play in the United States and on a bigger international stage. And Messi's been here, so that'll probably entice the likes of like a Neymar and maybe eventually Mbappe, and like it becomes Messi building this lore. And with Tata there, and let's not forget, Tata Martino is one of the best coaches and had been in this league for a very long time, with Atlanta United, and then just kind of being in and around the league with the international teams, and then now he's back with Inter Miami. So he's been around this league, and people that have coached underneath him have been around this league, and he just seems to know what's going on, Jordan. And it seems like he is of that ilk of just being one of those legendary coaches. And so lots of props to him, lots of props to the front office. They finally have righted the ship in Miami, and I think it's only going to get worse for other teams around the league, because I do think they're going to add a couple more players, and they'll easily run away with the Supporter Shield.
I still think Cincinnati will give them a good fight here. Cincinnati still has the better points per game, actually. 2 games in hand, and they're 2 points back. So Cincy feeling pretty good, I bet, as well here. Yeah, so there was a lot of interesting results this week here. LAFC beat Orlando 3-1. This was a similar situation, wasn't it? Where LAFC scored first, but then Orlando did equalize, and you're thinking, okay, just 20 minutes, Orlando. You just have to last 20 minutes, but they did not. 80th and 86th minute, LAFC pull away. Orlando had more possession. They had more shots, 20 shots, by the way. Only one on target. That's the one that goes in. LAFC had 12 shots, only 12 shots, but they had 7 on target. And an expected goals of 2.2 to 2.1 for Orlando, having 2.1. So, Logan, you kind of hinted about how our teams are in similar situations. I will say they're not really, because the Union are still in a playoff spot.
Right.
But
That's true. No, that part is true. Yes.
but give me your thoughts on Orlando and what's going on. And is this the end of Oscar Pereira? Do you expect at the end of this season he's gone?
Yeah, I think he is. There's been a lot of angst in the fan base. Fans have stopped showing up. They're trying to get supporter groups to not show up. Like, it's become a disaster. The Will family too. If you look at the Wilfs past, whenever they've not had a good team, they have spent a lot of money. And take for instance the Pride, who the Pride are playing pretty well right now. They've gone and spent a ton of money and off of a bad year where they've been the owners for that group. And Orlando City was really good last season. Had a really good season last year. Finished strong. I felt like should have come in as one of those favorites to contend for MLS Cup this year. And it has all fizzled out, and it's pretty much the same roster. You go back and look at the numbers from last year, and it was a lot of luck. I mean, it was like what we call luck in the stats and the numbers of expected goals and goals that have gone in, and, just the creation that they've had. Facundo Torres is not the player that I think they really need to really charge through this whole league. And, when he's not that guy, they don't really have that guy. Duncan McGuire is already 1 foot out the door, so you're going to lose your best striker. Your midfield's just a mess. You don't have a number 10 that can play consistently and be a dominant 10 in this league. Nico Ladera is a nice piece, but he's not that guy that's going to be able to carry a team through. And the defense has not been great. So it's one thing after the next. Galese, it sounds like he's going to be leaving soon. So it sounds like it's at the end, it's going to crumble and they're going to have to hit a reset. And I imagine it will have to be with somebody else besides Oscar Pereira, because as much as Oscar's done well here, they've kind of struggled like a Greg Berhalter team has. They don't score. Like, they just don't score enough. Like, you need an elite attack in this league, especially in this league. And they've never quite had that since Nani. So, Nani was kind of that guy that could become elite, and that's where he'd lead you through some of those playoff games. But they've never had that striker. They've never built that attack where it's like, oh my gosh. And they're in a city that I feel like we've been connected to a lot of players that we've actually had in to discuss different options. I know Suarez had been up here at some point to kind of look around and sniff around, but I think it was always with Messi. But again, we're always right there on the doorstep, but then we go crumbling back down. So I feel like Oscar's done after this season. I don't know who you replace him with, but
because he only signed a 2-year extension, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was. I can't remember.
That's what I thought it was. So I mean, you just cut it loose 1 year out and find a new guy instead of having like the dead year next year where it's like, oh, what's going to happen? Like it was last year. But then maybe he would perform.
Yeah, but this is far
the contract here,
right? But this is far from a retool. This is a tear it down.
Well, LAFC, by the way, let's talk about them. They're only 1 point back of RSL, Logan, and they have a game in hand. They have the best points per game in the West after struggling so much earlier this season. Here come LAFC, right? They've given up 20 goals, scored 31. They're finding their way. They have 1.94 points per game, and I wouldn't be shocked if they overcome RSL in the coming months. I think you actually, if I look back at predictions, right? When was this? Earlier this month, you said they would win the West. So, it's looking good. I mean, they're getting there. They're doing everything they can to get that position. I feel pretty good about LAFC right now. It was weird how they had such a slow start, but here they come. 10 wins, 4 losses, 3 draws. If we look at the form guide for LAFC, I want to pinpoint when their turnaround was, because everybody at a certain point they were really struggling, Logan, right? And we were thinking they're going to have to re-sign Carlos Vela,
Yeah.
and that didn't end up happening. There was talks, but they have what, 4 losses. 3 of those, Logan, happened by March 30th. They've only had 1 loss since, and that was May 4th. So since April 6th, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of their 10 wins. They have 2 draws and 1 loss since April 6th. By the way, they have a 6-game win streak right now. So if you really want to talk about when they turned it around, May 12th onward, they have won 6 straight games and have climbed. What is that? 6 times 3? You're looking at what is that? 18 points.
18.
18
yeah.
points in the last 6 weeks, 6 match days. That's more than like half of their points.
Yeah. They're getting help too, Jordan, by the name of Olivier Giroud. So, Jordan, I guess we can start talking about Steve Cherundolo as being one of the best managers in this league. He's done it now a couple years straight. He seems to find players whenever they lose players. Carlos Vela left, Chicho left, and he's tearing up with RSL. Then he's like, you know what? Let's find a Denny Bouanga, who's going to be one of the best players mentioned in this league. And just, it's unbelievable what LAFC has been able to do. Whereas I think other teams are trying to replicate it. And obviously, they've got deeper pockets than some of these other teams. But, their neighbors down the street, they're trying to replicate something similar. They just don't get any of the big fish anymore. LAFC is the destination now, which always seems to be the case with these big teams. Like, there's never been that I can remember back in the day where it's been like, a New York team and New York team have been so darn good. Maybe the Red Bull and NYCFC at some point, but yeah, like this is just impressive at this point. And gosh, can you imagine? You got a Golden Boot player and Denny Bouanga, and then you add Olivier Giroud into this mix. Like that's more potent than I think Miami can provide, because I think there will be games that Suarez and Messi can't play. So Giroud and Bouanga, man. Giroud's kind of like that guy that he just strikes me as I'm going to play every match kind of guy. So,
I hope so. That'd be cool.
Imagine him though. Like, I'm so excited about that. Like, it's one of my most anticipated signings that has ever happened in MLS, just because of how good he is.
It's bigger than the Messi signing. I mean, this is a guy that's played at Chelsea,
right?
Arsenal. He's an EPL proven striker.
He's a Champions League winner, isn't he?
Yeah, so is Messi, but yeah.
Yeah, forget that guy.
Yeah.
This is Olivier's league.
So there you go. That is the LAFC portion here. I wanted to highlight some of these other scores that happened this weekend here real quick. Atlanta, Houston finished 2-2. Charlotte beat DC 1-0. Montreal held RSL to a draw. 0-0 draw. New England beat Vancouver. I'm going to highlight that in a second. 3-2. Red Bulls and Nashville draw 0-0. I feel like that's normal for Nashville and New York. Is that how the season started?
Yeah, usually, I think.
That's how the season started, because everybody was like, Forsberg's first game as a rep, and it finished like 0-0. LAFC Orlando 3-1. Miami over Philly 2-1. Chicago beating Toronto 4-1. So there you go. Shout out Andrew there. Toronto struggled that game. That was at BMO Field too. Dallas beating St. Louis 2-0. Colorado beating Austin 2-0. LA Galaxy beating SKC 4-2. A pretty standard Galaxy game. They give up a couple goals, but end up outscoring.
Score a ton.
Cincinnati win 4-2 over San Jose, and Seattle beat Minnesota 2-0. This was my pick of the week because of the fits, right? The outfits, the uniforms, jerseys. And that's the one I watched late Saturday night, and I was not disappointed in the sense
Shocking
of
result.
Yeah, a little bit of an upset. But you know what? It was fun. It was fun. Unfortunately for Minnesota, that kind of lowers their points per game, because they were kind of trending very well for a bit, but they've kind of struggled as of late. Like form guide for Minnesota, they have 2 losses in their last 4 games and only 1 win in their last 4 games, and that was against SKC. So recently, kind of struggling, Minnesota United. They're still top four, and they have a 4-point lead over Vancouver, who's really tailed off there. But one of the things I wanted to highlight with New England, Logan, is that they're up to 16 points. That's only 1 point back of Orlando and Atlanta, 2 points back of Montreal, Chicago, 3 points back of DC, and guess what? 4 points back of Nashville and Philly. Philly is closer to bottom with New England of 4 points than they are to the top four with NYCFC 9 points. So, really, the gap in the East from 8 down to 15 is 4 points. Crazy.
Anything can happen in this league.
It can. I mean, looking at how much Seattle struggled earlier this season. And it's been a fun battle the last few weeks is seeing Seattle and Portland just keep flip-flopping each other.
Yeah.
Like last playoff spot, out of the playoff spot, last playoff spot. Because Seattle's back on top this week above Portland. But yeah, I mean, even Seattle, who struggled so much, they're only 8 points out of a top 4 spot. That's not many games. If they keep playing the way that they've been playing recently, where they've been picking up more wins and draws, then they have a shot, right? Like Seattle's first win of the season was April 7th. Since then, they have won 5 games, which are all 5 of their wins. But like that's crazy. They've had some losses still sprinkled in there at times, but I mean, they're picking up a lot more wins than they were at the beginning of the year. So if they keep doing that, they have a chance of actually making a playoff spot. Just the West has been intriguing too, because I feel like the West and the East, it's like the top 4 are your really good teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And below that is kind of where you're like, we start to see some cracks.
Yeah.
Like if I list out the standings here, you have Miami, Cincinnati, New York, NYCFC. That's your top 4. Those are the best teams in the East, I think. Columbus could sneak their way in there, but they're rebounding after CCC. Charlotte's in 5th, Columbus is in 6th, Toronto's in 7th. And those are like, yeah, they've been having a good year. Mm-hmm. Then you have the teams that the fans will say not having a good year. Philly and Nashville in 8 and 9. And then DC, Chicago, Montreal, Orlando, and New England. Over in the West, you have Salt Lake, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Minnesota. And that's your top 4. And then you have 5th, 6th, and 7th being Vancouver, Colorado, and Houston. Teams that were like, oh yeah, they've been doing pretty good. And then you have 8 and 9 being Austin and Seattle, where the fans are kind of like, not up to our usual standards. And then out of the playoff spots, you have Portland, St. Louis, Dallas, SKC, and San Jose. There's a bigger gap in the West. San Jose has 11 points, and it's a 10-point gap to 9th place there. So instead of the 6-point gap in the East.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the 4 teams, I would say that, looking at these 4 teams, Minnesota's kind of struggled recently, but I think are still one of the there is a clear divide there. And I think
still 4 points up, even with their
noticeable. Yeah. It's noticeable in talent and in the way that they're playing. I think that they're very top heavy this season where, there was times where the 3 and 4 weren't as strong and maybe the 5 and 6 could kind of bounce them. But I really do. Right now, the way that they're playing, I feel like the top 4. It's crazy to me too, Jordan. You look at this, 2 and 3 in the West are LA, and then 3 and 4 in the East are NYC and Red Bull. That's cool. 2 of the big markets in the United States. Their teams are finally producing something. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Columbus, like you said, is a sneaky team because they have rebounded and have rebounded well, and I feel like could beat some big teams. They beat NYCFC, so there are teams I think that they can win against, and if they're firing on all cylinders, they're still one of the best teams in this league. So I guess we'll see. The East will be an interesting playoff because I think it's pretty much Miami and Cincinnati going at each other, and everybody else is kind of chasing each other. So we'll see. Still a lot of season left. Still a lot of Copa left. See how they come back after that. And it's shaping out to be a lot more thrilling of a year and a lot more lopsided of a year than I thought we would have, from teams that we didn't expect to be there.
Yeah, it's seeming to be very top heavy, where the top four in each conference are like the ones that I think are actual contenders for MLS
Right.
Cup. And the middle playoff teams are going to be just happy to be there.
Yep.
The wildcard teams are going to be like, why are we still playing? And then the other teams are going to be like, it's time to rebuild.
The
And
wildcard
that's
teams,
how we.
sure, the wildcard teams are those teams that are like, take me out back and just shoot me.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, oh, the glory days are behind us.
Yes, because it will. There's a good chance it could be like Seattle and Portland and Nashville and Philly. Could you
Yeah.
imagine? It's all four of those teams that are going in the opposite direction. Like,
Right. Right.
oh shoot!
But
So
it's crazy out of there. I think out of those, I have more faith in Seattle than any of those teams
that's what I was
because they
thinking.
have Smetzer and
Yep.
they can figure it out. I think. I
Right.
think they
A
can.
one-off playoff game with that roster can figure it out if they're healthy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially if they're going up against Austin.
Yeah.
Okay. Wednesday, we have games this week. Wednesday,
Too many games.
Charlotte and Orlando at 7:30. DC, Atlanta, Miami, Columbus, Montreal, Red Bulls, Toronto, Nashville. Those are all on Apple TV, and they are free. Cincinnati and Philadelphia are going to be at 7:45 on FS1 and on Apple TV for free. All the games this week are free. At 8:30, we have Austin, LAFC, Dallas, Minnesota, Houston, Seattle, SKC, RSL, St. Louis, Colorado. And then at 10:30, we have LA Galaxy, NYCFC, and then San Jose, Portland. I feel like San Jose and Portland play each other like 5 times a year. 3 times, I think, is
Which
what
would
the
be
actual
unfortunate for anybody watching that's not a fan of those teams.
Saturday, June 22nd, we have Cincy and New England Revolution, Columbus SKC, DC Houston, that's free, Red Bulls Toronto, that's free, Orlando Chicago, Philadelphia Charlotte, Minnesota Austin. Those start the Minnesota Austin starts the 8:30 games. Nashville NYCFC, St. Louis Atlanta. Then at 9:30 we have Colorado and Montreal. RSL LA Galaxy, LAFC and San Jose start off the 10:30 matches. Portland Vancouver and Seattle Dallas. Those are your next games until we get back. And then like we said, the Copa America games that kick off Thursday through Sunday. We'll talk all about that stuff on Monday, which I guess I'll say this. Due to recent developments, might be my last episode for a couple weeks or whatever, Monday, just because of timing and stuff like that with the baby. So we'll see. We'll keep you updated on all that stuff on what it is. I don't want to miss too much time with this, but obviously more important things going on. So that might be kind of like where we recap the first game of Copa and these weekend matches. And then maybe, I don't know what the plan is, Logan, if you're going to do solo shows, because then you're in Chicago right after that. So we might just take a week off and then come back and see what's going on. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But wanted to just get that out of the way in case of it comes up.
Yeah, I might do an emergency solo if you can't go. If there's a lot going on with U.S. men's national team.
Yeah.
If not, then this league can wait a week.
Yeah. None of the table's going to change.
Nothing's
really.
going to really
maybe
change.
Seattle and Portland flip flop again, but
right.
The rest of it seems
Orlando,
pretty good.
Wooden spoon. So, but who knows?
You can reach us at Stateside Show on all of our social media, statesideshow@gmail.com for long form emails. Like and subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel. We gained a couple subscribers this week, so thank you for that. We had some comments going back and forth about should Greg go or should he stay? That was on the video last week. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps other people find the show. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time when we talk the opening Copa America matches as the USA get ready to perform in another international tournament 2 years out from hosting a World Cup.